Hello again. This is Jacque Gray, Director of the National Indigenous Elder Justice Initiative, or NIEJI. And I am looking forward to presenting again today, this time on financial exploitation. So at this point, I will share my screen. And we're going to talk about elder abuse, financial exploitation, and identity theft today. So to start with, as I said, I'm Jacque Gray. I'm director of NIEJI, but I'm also a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. I'm a Choctaw and Cherokee descendant. I'm a professor and associate director at the Center for Rural Health. So I wear many hats. NIEJI, or the National Indigenous Elder Justice Initiative, is a national resource center for Native American elder abuse. And our mission is restoring respect and dignity by honoring Indigenous elders. That we want to focus on the outcome that we want, which is to make things the best we can and a healthy and respectful environment for our Indigenous elders. The areas that we focus on in NIEJI are coming up with culturally based resources, helping tribes to develop elder abuse codes, technical assistance and education around cross-jurisdictional issues, online education for professionals, and raising public awareness on elder abuse. So yesterday we talked a little bit about elder abuse and all the different things. Just kind of a recap, as many times elders don't consider themselves to be abused. And as you talk with them, using the words disrespect or mistreated is more apt to get you information about abuse and neglect that may have occurred. A native elder varies from tribe to tribe, but usually is over 55 years of age, knowledgeable of the culture, and they have wisdom from life or educational experiences. The term elderly only addresses the person's age. So we're talking about a difference between an elder and elderly. And again, elder abuse is any knowing, intentional, or negligent act by a caregiver or any other person that causes harm or a serious risk of harm to a vulnerable adult. So this can be either vulnerable due to age or illness or disability. Some of the types I went through yesterday: physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, neglect, self-neglect, abandonment, and spiritual. So what about the numbers? We don't really have a lot of good data on elder abuse in Indian country, but the National Resource Center on Native American Aging does a elder needs survey with tribal elders from the Title VI programs every 3 years. And from their survey, 39% of elders have fallen in the past year. Where you need to be concerned are unexplained falls, malnourished or inadequate food. 1 in 6 Native elders reporting eating less than 2 meals a day. So that's 1 or 0. They're unable, or they have no help to shop, cook, or they have difficulty feeding themselves. 1 in 9 Native elders report that they're unable to shop, cook, or feed themselves. 1 in 8 report that they don't have money to buy food. So more of the numbers: Native elders report that they need help with errands and shopping, about 1 in 4. And handling their money, about 2 in 5 or 41% need help with money. Housekeeping and chores, 1 in 3 need help with housekeeping and chores. And when we're talking about business or financial advice, almost half feel like they need help with that. And then a big one is companionship. 1 in 5 indicated that they need some companionship, that they are lonely or isolated. When we talk about the resources and services that are available in Indian country, this is another issue. During that same survey, when they ask about elder abuse prevention services, about 1% said that they used them at that time, but almost 13% would use them if they were available to them. That's saying that there is a big disconnect in what is needed and what is available. Financial assistance, again, almost 10 times as many would use it as now have it available. Legal assistance, we see as well. Caregivers, 6% used it, 32% would use it if they were available. Personal care, home health care, home modification. Transportation's always a big one. Almost 10% used it, but 35% would use it if it was available. And then home delivered meals, only 14% used it currently, but 36% would use it if it was available to them. So maybe some of that is getting information out about what's available. So who are the victims? Well, according to the National Center on Elder Abuse, any older adult, and they generally consider 60 over, but it depends on the tribal definition. Those that are disproportionately affected are people who are isolated, those living in poverty, or those who have cognitive impairments like dementia. Women are twice as likely as men to be impacted as victims, and those that are residents in long-term care facilities, which is why the ombudsmans are really important. Who commits elder abuse? Intimate partners, adult children and other family members, caregivers, fiduciaries, others who are or put themselves into positions of trust or authority, and last on the list is strangers. So why does that elder abuse occur? Talked a little about this yesterday. Greed, benefits of predatory behavior, power and control, the dynamics similar to younger members and domestic violence. People that have good intentions, and the caregivers who cause them harm, even if they're trying to provide care. So in providing care, maybe that is a very fragile elder, and in helping them move or something like that, they have a bone break or something happens with the caregiver trying to help them. Physical and mental health conditions, when they can't control their behavior. This is a really important one, that, you know, they lash out. Maybe they're with dementia, they're afraid because they don't know where they are. They don't recognize the people around them. There may be lots of things with that. We talked a little about this before, that natives are at risk because of their values. Generosity, willing to give whatever they have to help someone. They focus on taking care of today and letting tomorrow take care of itself. Their role in the family or their position, they may have been the caregiver or the one that provided for the family for their whole life. And it's really hard for them to step back and not be that one that helps and supports all of the family members. And then they expect to be respected, not taken advantage of. Some of those vulnerabilities of the native elderly, that dependence upon others for assistance, having to ask for help is always a really difficult transition when you've always been independent and then it gets to a point that you've got to ask for help. That's really tough. They don't want their caregivers to go to jail, whether it's a family member or someone they're just close to because they've given them care. You know, they don't want them to go to jail. They just want whatever the abuse is to stop. And they're very forgiving, especially of family members. Many have spent their lives taking care of the family. So being vulnerable to those family needs and expectations, it makes them feel like they hold a greater importance in the family. And otherwise they'll be neglected or left out. IHS, they see different providers every time they go in for health care. And IHS has no policy about reporting elder abuse because it varies from tribe to tribe, and it's hard for them to have a policy across all of IHS. So that is kind of a summary as far as the elder abuse and some of the things that I talked about before. And now I want to go into more depth on financial exploitation. First, I have a little activity. So I want you to tell me, you'll have to unmute yourselves. Tell me what you think financial abuse is. We have anybody willing to take a chance?
The misuse of someone's money or property not for the benefit of the elder.
Okay, thank you. And what about fraud? And how does fraud differ from elder abuse? Anybody? Well, fraud is one area of elder abuse, but not all fraud is elder abuse. Fraud can happen to anyone at any time. But whenever someone's money, especially money or property, is taken through trickery or by some other method, by someone that doesn't need, it's very similar to the elder abuse definition that you just gave, Lori, but it's very much has that trickery or that exploitation aspect to it. And then identity theft. Who can tell me what identity theft is? Anyone?
Taking the identity of an individual to either be to make financial gains. It could also be other purposes as well. But they're taking their social security or their name, their address, different things like that to typically reap financial gain is probably the most common.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. All right, so I'm going to talk a little more about each of those. So with financial abuse, we're talking about exploitation of property, resources, and assets by denying the elderly person access, stealing or hiding the assets, purposeful mismanagement or deception. That can be, okay, I need money to go get your meds, and although they only cost $40, I'm keeping the rest of the $100, but you don't tell them about it. Fraud, extortion, forging, scams, and identity theft also fall under that umbrella of financial abuse. And then improper use of legal documents can also be financial abuse. So some of the examples that I've been given from Indian country of exploitation, tribal judges give examples such as a granddaughter wiped out grandma's bank account, or misusing the elder's monthly check and not paying for food or bills for the elder. The Title VI directors with the nutrition and senior programs said the family gambled away the elder's only income, or the family takes the elder's personal items and the family took the elder's check. So you see a little different level between the tribal judges and the Title VI directors. But then when they asked tribal elders what they thought about as far as exploitation, they said, you know, they had a grandchild that took the elder's car and wrecked it, or the grandchildren pressured the elder for money, or the family cashed the elder's checks and locked them in the room, or the family borrowed money and didn't pay it back. The granddaughter and her boyfriend moved in and were supported by the elder. And this was an adult granddaughter and her boyfriend. Taking advantage by relatives, like using their homes to leave their grandchildren to feed, clothe, babysit for weeks or months or years at a time. All right. Some of the effects of that exploitation, those resources can't be recovered. They're gone. And, you know, the elder can't get them back. The elders don't want family caregivers punished. And those elders have lost those essential living needs, their food, their shelter, their utilities, their transportation, the care that they have, or their medication. It all impacts how they're living. So moving on to fraud. The legal definition of fraud is the intentional deception, and here that word deception comes in there, to secure unfair or unlawful gain or to deprive a victim of a legal right. Fraud can violate civil law, criminal law, or it may cause no loss of money, property, or legal right, but still be an element of another civil or criminal wrong. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, fraud is deceit, trickery, and specifically intentional perversion of the truth in order to induce another to part with something of value or to surrender a legal right, such as credit card fraud. So that deceit and trickery is a key part of fraud. So financial material or exploitation is defined as the illegal or improper use of an elder's funds, property, or assets. This can include, but isn't limited to, cashing an elderly person's checks without authorization or permission, forging an older person's signature, misusing or stealing an older person's money or possessions, coercing or deceiving an older person into signing a document, such as a will or a contract, the improper use of conservatorship, guardianship, or power of attorney. And I remember working with a friend of mine who was legally blind, and he counted on his caregiver to deposit his checks into his account that he had automatic withdrawals to pay his bills. And she would line things up for him, sign the check, and then she would go and cash it. And so he got really behind on his bills and paying his rent and things like that. And he didn't know why. Some other examples are when maybe college students even go to the grandparents and I need money to buy books for school. I need money to come home and visit you. Basically, I can't come visit you and give you that companionship that you really want unless you give me money to do it. The bills were higher than expected, where you keep the money that's left over from paying some of those bills. I need money for gas to run your errands. Well, there's a legitimate piece to that, but when the gas costs more than twice the amount that, you know, rings up, you've got to start looking at some of those things. And I need to go pay for your medicines. Well, that also may be legitimate, but then making sure that they get the receipts and the money back from paying for them. Some issues as far as tribal elders, you know, finding those resources, finding the right places to help with any of those needs that they have. And in Indian country, especially those cross-jurisdictional issues. The banks may be on state land. The adult protective services, are you using the state adult protective services or tribal adult protective services? Tribal elder services may not expand to some of these areas. And then the law enforcement and the courts across the jurisdictions, and how do you handle all of that? Drug issues for caregivers or something happening within the home can cost the elder their housing. So recognizing those things and what they need to do to protect themselves. What's a scam? Anybody have an idea? Have you heard of scams?
I'm going to, I live in another country and you need to send me money. I love you. I'm going to come and get you and marry you and take care of you forever after, but I don't have any money, so you need to send me some money.
Uh-huh. And does that work for you?
It never works for me, but it sure works for our victims.
It really does. That's one of many scams that are out there. Thank you, Susan. So I'm going to talk about some of the scams that are targeted the elderly. There are Medicare and healthcare scams. These are the top 10 scams targeting the elderly. Medicare and healthcare insurance scams, counterfeit prescription drugs, funeral and cemetery scams, fraudulent anti-aging products. Anybody bought into any of those? Telemarketing and phone scams, internet fraud, investment schemes, homeowner reverse mortgage scams, sweepstakes and lottery scams, and the grandparent scam. Have you heard of those? Any of them?
Yes, all of them.
All of them, okay. Well, the Medicare card scam is one that people don't think about their Medicare card being as important as a credit card, and that they really need to keep that number safe. And just in the last couple of years, Medicare has changed over from using a person's Social Security number on their Medicare card to a random number that's generated for them. By using their Social Security number, there was a lot of identity theft that was taking place throughout the Medicare system with the cards. It has personal information on it, and it very often will have birth date, the person's name, all kinds of things like that, and it really needs to be kept secure. Nobody from Medicare is going to call and ask for your card number or your personal information. And again, those new Medicare cards should have arrived with the unique number, the Social Security number not on it anymore. IRS and tax scams. And I get email or phishing or malware. I got one just this morning, an email saying something about an invoice or something like that with a spreadsheet attached. And I sent it off to our IT people saying, I don't recognize this. What should I do? And they emailed back and said, don't open anything, delete it. But they're really good at these things. And, you know, you can't quite figure out what it is. And so you may open something you shouldn't, trying to figure that out. Well, the people that do these, especially on the phone, well, and emails and texts and all of that as well, they're very aggressive. They're very sophisticated. They're con artists. They are not the IRS. The IRS will not call you or email you. But when these con artists get on there, they tell them that they owe the money. And if you refuse to pay, they're threatened that they're going to send the sheriff right over to arrest you, or you'll be deported, or your license will be suspended, or some of those things. So just remember, and I had a staff member working with me that right after she left to go back to school, she called me and she said, I got this letter from the IRS and I wasn't sure it was real. So I went to the website and found their phone number and called them up. She said, unfortunately, the letter was real. But she was checking it out. And it's to the point that we really need to do things like that. Counterfeit prescription drugs. Have you heard about this? These are either illegal. Well, they are illegal, but they're very hazardous to the elder's health because you don't know what you're really taking. You know, they can be made up of all kinds of things. There are fake medications, Botox, Cialis, cancer meds that do people no good or in many cases can do harm. They're not produced to the Food and Drug Administration specifications. They may be contaminated or contain the wrong ingredients, such as fentanyl, and they may have the wrong dosage. So, you know, you need to make sure when they're getting medications that they're getting them from a legitimate source. Funeral and cemetery scams. They're contracts that prearrange to pay for a person's funeral. They want to ease that financial and emotional burden on the family. The protections and laws vary from state to state on how that works. And sometimes there's a window of opportunity for those unscrupulous operators to overcharge expenses or to list themselves as beneficiaries on those contracts. The fraudulent anti-aging products. There are more and more of these all the time. You see them all over the TV. Internet, everywhere. There's global access to health and beauty products. But those that you get over the internet and from the TV advertisements, you don't necessarily know if they're approved or not, or whether they have any actual benefit. It's looked at as a low-risk crime because it's located outside the United States. And it contains dangerous ingredients, carcinogens like arsenic, beryllium, and cadmium, contain aluminum or bacteria from urine in some of these things. They cause conditions like acne, psoriasis, rashes, and eye infections. So it's important to make sure that any type of thing that you buy is tested and approved. Some of the telemarketing and phone scams. The pigeon drop, the fake accident ploy, the charity scams, and the IRS and tax scams. I just talked about the IRS and tax scams. Have you heard of some of the others? I think the pigeon drop is the one that people aren't quite sure what it is. Well, how often have you been contacted that you won the sweepstakes or a lottery? You'll get a telemarketer or an email or something saying that you won all of this. They may identify themselves as lawyers or customs officials or lottery representatives. They tell people that they've won vacations or cars or money, but the winners have to pay fees for shipping, insurance, customs duties, or taxes before they can get their prize. This is called a pigeon drop. Federal Trade Commission has information about these types of scams. Disaster relief scams. You know, whether it's pandemic or hurricane or floods or wildfires or blizzards or tornadoes or earthquakes, there's somebody out there to take advantage. The callers lie about your insurance, whether or not it'll cover whatever it is they're trying to sell you to do. Sometimes phantom debt collectors impersonate law firms to try to get you to pay money. And always, you need to make sure your giving is wise following disasters and that you're actually giving to a legitimate relief organization. Sweetheart or affinity scam, that's kind of what Susan was talking about when we talked about scams in the beginning. This is really for lonely seniors that want some companionship, so that makes them very susceptible. The warning signs: the person poses as a perfect suitor. They are exactly what you've always looked for. They lure the victim into a romance and then loot their finances. In 2014, Americans lost more than $82 billion to online dating fraud. And someone you never met in person happens when someone that you've never met in person wants to talk with you privately. So it may be on Facebook, and then they message you to talk privately, or to get your phone number to call you, or to set your email address to send messages to your private email account. And there was a great article on this in February 2017 Consumer Reports. Some of the other warning signs is once they establish that online relationship and you try to set up a time to meet or a place to meet or something like that, there'll be multiple excuses to avoid meeting in person. They'll cancel dates at the last minute for some outlandish reason. And then they'll begin pleas for money that might involve expenses for family members, medical problems, or a business deal that might have gone wrong. The grandparent scam. And this is getting broader and broader as far as the impact. Now, we all know that grandchildren do not call their grandparents enough. I can tell you, I know that. And all of a sudden, you get a call in the middle of the night, and they say it's one of the grandkids, and that they're out of the state or out of the country and they're in trouble. They're in jail for maybe drunk driving or drug charges. And maybe you don't recognize the voice. Well, then they say, well, I have a broken nose, or I'm sick. I need money to get out of jail, but don't tell my parents. They can't know about this. Well, 3 billion a year is lost through this scam. My own parents were lured in by this scam, but saying it was my daughter-in-law. And my grandson travels a lot, so she was saying that she couldn't reach him and she needed help right away. And they went out in the middle of the night and wired money. The drug smuggling scam. Now, this one is really dangerous. It entices people with the promise of an inheritance or a business opportunity that requires you to fly to other countries. Your travel expenses are all paid for these lavish overseas trips, but you're just asked to deliver a present or a gift to someone. And when you arrive, those gifts are found to contain drugs and chocolates, tea, canned goods, soap, and other things. And then the elder is arrested and detained by local authorities. And it can be a very difficult legal battle to try to get out of these situations. Internet fraud. I think we've all heard there's a lot of internet fraud. Whew. Okay. Well, business email compromise. That's kind of what I experienced this morning, is someone sends stuff to your business email, and then they can, you open that up, and it has this, though this, what's in this attachment, that it can take over your email and send out all of these emails to everybody in your contacts and create all kinds of problems by infecting their email. A data breach. We hear in the news periodically about different types of data breaches. One of the biggest one was Experian. That was the one of the companies that does a lot of the credit check information. And someone got access to that a few years ago, and so they probably got everybody's contact information out of that. And that ends up being sold on the dark web. And, you know, you can be denied service and things like that whenever you're compromised. Same, you know, just like your business account, email account can become compromised, so can your personal email account. There's malware and scareware. Malware infects your computer to where maybe someone can access things off of it. Scareware basically comes up with something scary happening on it. Phishing and spoofing, where someone takes over your account. Ransomware, and I'm hearing more and more about this, where you open up something out of your email and it takes over and they capture all of your data off of your computer, and you can't get access to it again without paying some type of ransom for it. And, you know, if you don't, then you just lost everything. Tech support scam. They call up, maybe say they're from Microsoft or some other company, to break into your computer. And they'll call up and say that they detected malware or viruses on your computer. And would you give them remote access to your computer so they can make the changes and settings and clean it off so that it won't impact your computer? Well, what they're really asking is, give me control of the computer and I can get access to all of your accounts, all your passwords, and anything else that you have on that computer. Identity theft. Okay, some examples that we've had as far as I think we've already covered this one. In 2014, over 17 million people were victims of identity theft. That's 7% of the whole US population. And nearly 500,000 complaints were made to the Federal Trade Commission in 2015. So what is it? It's stealing your identity, including using your personal information without your permission. Your name, your social security number, a credit card number, your birth date. The results of that is people rent apartments, get credit cards, start other accounts in your name. And you don't know until you get the bill or review your credit report and see the charges that you didn't make or are contacted by the debt collector for not paying them. Some signs of fraud or identity theft: the accounts on your credit report that you didn't open. So you're reviewing your credit report and it gives you information about every loan, every credit card, how much you owe on them, things like that all the way through. And you see some on there that you don't have credit cards for and you never opened. You better start checking into it. There's incorrect personal information on your report. Maybe it has a wrong address or wrong phone number. Check into some of that. Credit inquiries from companies that you never contacted to get credit from, or wrong amounts showing on your accounts. Or you might find money missing from your bank account. And another one with your credit card numbers, or the bills that you used to get aren't being delivered. They've been sent to a different address because someone changed it. So again, some of those examples of misuse are opening credit cards, opening utility accounts, applying for a tax refund. That, you know, they were really telling people to get their taxes in early because if you didn't, there was a chance of people applying with your social security number and getting your tax refund, and you wouldn't be able to get it later. Getting a loan, applying for employment, and getting medical care are all things that people have misused others' identities for. What it does as far as the victims is you're later denied credit or loans. You're denied your own benefits that you earned. You're denied medical care. You may be harassed by debt collectors for something you never did. There may be lawsuits, lots of stress and anxiety, embarrassment, time and expenses spent on trying to recover from that. So, what do you do about all of this? Well, come to part 2, and we'll talk more about some of those things that can be done to address all of these issues of financial exploitation. So I'm going to stop sharing at that point and ask if there are any questions. Any of those scams you'd never heard of? Marcia, if you're talking, I can't hear you. Are you talking?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I unmuted you.
Okay, so the pigeon drop, I had never heard of that. And I thought that was, especially with the lottery. In fact, we were just talking about that when I believe it was HBO did the McDonald's Monopoly scam, and how individuals were were part of that. I know up here, one of the things that we've been having issues with is the initiative of car dealers actually scamming elders on co-signing for family members that can't afford their vehicles and stuff. That's been really frustrating. I know our consumer advocate has taken it upon themselves to actually put a stop to that, you know, putting more preventative measures to help the elders. I mean, and then the other one is with regards to the payday loans. That's one of our biggest, I would say, perpetrators, because it's frustrating to see individuals getting scammed out of thousands of dollars on top of borrowing $200, and they end up paying, you know, thousands back. So yeah, it's frustrating. So.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Do you have a question?
I was just asking, are there any organizations to assist with compromise?
Okay, so Jermaine, my coworker, she was just asking, are there any outside agencies that can actually assist elders that had been victims of identity theft, and who should they contact with that?
Come back tomorrow for part 2, and we'll talk about what do you do about it.
Okay. There you go, Jermaine.
Okay.
Is that a hook?
That's a hook for tomorrow, yeah.
That's a scam.
No, that's a scam.
No, because I'm going to deliver.
Oh, okay.
So it's
okay.
not a scam. Now, if I told you that and didn't show up tomorrow,
yeah,
that would be a scam.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. All right, awesome.
Other questions?
Any questions,
No.
Jermaine? Zelda?
All right. If
Awesome.
not, thank you very much for coming today, and I look forward to doing more of these.
Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
All right, May, I think we're done.